What's going on, you guys? The TheRcCrawlerKing here, and today we're doing another Tech Tuesday video. This time, it's going to be a little bit more of a pro tip or something I think that would be extremely useful if you're running into the same situation that I'm running into. Now, the problem that I got going on with my Jeep here is about 2 years ago, I know, it's been a bit of a hiatus. I haven't really been driving this thing a whole lot. About 2 years ago, I was having a constant issue where the winch, if I sucked it in too much, would end up burning out the RC40BD wired winch controller. Now, in order to fix that problem, I would have to take the body off, I'd have to take the battery tray out, take the receiver cover out, take the wired winch controller out, desolder it, waterproof the new one. Like, I'd have to have the new ones waterproof and prepped because they weren't waterproof from the factory. So it was just a lot of hassle and headache to go into the truck every time that the controller would burn out. And I think just what was happening is the controller was actually the weak point. So if it would get bound up, it would actually burn out the controller first before it snapped the gear train and the winch. Now, the gear train and the winch, I believe it was about $9. Like, it was pretty cheap. I have a bunch of them as spares because, you know, you break them all the time using the winch. But the winch is really easy to get out. There's just 4 screws holding it in place. I've got a connector right at the front of the bumper, so I could take the winch right off and service it right out there on the trail or whatever. Take the winch apart, put a new gearbox in, done, good to go, right? I don't even have to take the body off for that, so kind of a no-brainer to do this modification that I want to go over today with you guys. So my plan was to use these Hobbywing 1080 brushed speed controllers as a replacement for a winch controller. Now, in theory, this should work because the winch is just a brushed motor. I know this might be a little overkill for running a tiny little brushed motor like that, but I think this is going to be the solution to end all my problems with burning out wired winch controllers. Now, not only is this going to be a smart idea, but I was looking online at the price of some of these things, as I know that was one of the main things that I was kind of blown away by when I looked into doing this change. And if I look at the RC4BD wired winch controllers, US price is about $30. Some hobby shops in Canada are selling these for like 45. Amazon Canada has it for 60. eBay's got it for 46. So you kind of average that out. You know, you're paying about $45 for one of those wired winch controllers from RC4BD. Now, that's pretty expensive to be burning that on, especially every time that motor gets super bound up and it burns out. And then, of course, I have to modify every controller that I get in, disassemble the case, dip it in Plasti Dip, make it waterproof, all that good stuff. So the other option is these Hobbywing 1060 speed controllers. And looking online just through Google, I can see that the price of these is 20, 24, 25, 21. They're all pretty fairly priced, especially since they could literally be used to run the motor that actually drives this car. So I think this is going to be a way better solution in the long run to ensure that I don't have to do any costly or time-consuming repairs on the trail. So without wasting any more time, guys, let's hop into fixing this Jeep. The first thing we got to do, we got to pull the body off here so we can get access to what we're going to be fixing. This unit's old, man. This thing been around for a long time. It's got some mileage on it, that's for sure. Set that off to the side. Now, our wired winch controller is located inside the receiver box, so we're gonna have to hop into there next to get access to make the repair. That's these 2 screws here. And then once you got those removed, these 2 here that hold the tray and the receiver box cover on. Obviously, your own vehicles will be different. I'm sure there's not a lot of people using a Gen 1 SCX-10 anymore. I'm old school though, and I will tell you the cost of these cars have become pretty crazy over the last little while. So running the old stuff ain't a problem for me. As long as I can get parts for it and make it run and roll, that's all that matters. Okay, there we go. I'll pop the receiver box cover off and we can see what we got going on inside the receiver box here. So the winch controller on this bad boy has already been removed. I have actually pulled it out already, and I think I threw it away. Anyways, let's open up one of the ESCs now. It's crazy too, because I bought these forever ago, so I probably actually bought these for like 15 bucks, but... Okay, so looking at the ESC right off the hop, we got one of these old Tamiya style connectors that we're obviously going to cut off. We have an on-off switch, which is going to be a no-go for us. We're going to have to cut that and just solder the wires together so it turns on as soon as we plug the battery in. Our receiver plug, which is going to go to our receiver, in our auxiliary port for the winch. And then obviously our 2 wires for the motor itself. Now, you can tell just by the gauge of these wires, they're obviously meant to run the brush motor that drives the car drivetrain itself, but we're just going to use it on a tiny little winch motor. So definitely more than enough to hold up to that, I think. The winch, or the ESC here, shows LiPo and nickel metal hydride. So we'll want to pull this pin and move it over to LiPo. And then this one here is forward, brake, reverse, forward, brake, and then forward, reverse with nothing plugged in. So we want forward, reverse. We just want this thing to go forward and backward. We don't want any brake involved in that process. So basically this other jumper here, we're just gonna pull that out and we're gonna leave that out by the look of that diagram there. I'll go ahead and cut these leads off here right now so we can get that set up, because we're gonna use the red JST plugs on this bad boy, so we don't need these. We don't need this old Tamiya plug. I don't think anybody's using these Tamiya plugs anymore. And if you are, oh my god. They're not really a great option because they have a high resistance in them, so they're not a great choice if you're trying to get like good performance on what you're hooking up to your car. Anyways, I need to plug the ESC motor wires into this JST right here. So conveniently, look what I have left myself. I left myself years ago in the roof rack is this a micro JST? Some kind of micro JST connector. A red JST, right? Yeah, JST, these red JST connectors, they're pretty common. Then I left myself a receiver plug wire. This is off of probably the old winch control unit, because all you really need is just the signal wire from the receiver, that's it. The power comes from here. I'm not too sure what this one's for. There's this here. What is this? Do I have a... Wait a minute. Oh, we used to run a BEC on this truck to power all the lights and everything. Okay, that goes... This connector is going to be what powers our winch. So this is basically like straight battery power. This connector is going to go to this JST power plug like that. This is our red and black for powering the ESC to make it turn on. And then my winch controller, or my winch itself, I decided to run off of these little white JSTs. I could have used the same red ones, but I think I just had a lot of these white ones kicking around, so that's what we ended up running for the winch itself at this point. This will go to the motor wires, so we're gonna have to connect these to this. Red to red, black to black to power the ESC, and then yellow and blue is for our motor, which is gonna go to this white connector, and that's gonna go to the winch power here. And then the last thing we'll have to do is wire up this receiver plug to basically be this right here running to the receiver. So let me see what position we want to put this thing in for it to make the most amount of sense here. So again, here's my 2 years ago experience measuring things. Oh my god, is it ever tight? That's what she said. That is so tight, dude. Oh man, yeah, me from 2 years ago definitely measured this. We're gonna cut this one right down, get rid of it, so we don't have to worry about that. And then the receiver wire only needs to run to like right here basically, so it doesn't have to go very far. Just real quick, so that you guys have reference for your own rigs. This would be more useful information for you guys. So the sizing of this winch itself, if we look at the length of it, it is about 1 3/4 inch, 1 3/4 inch in length, and then in height we're sitting at this little dip switch. This little dip switch is going to be a thing that we have to incorporate as well too. So it's about 3/4 of an inch tall if you count that little dip switch thing, which I mean, you could cut this probably a little bit because it doesn't go all the wire doesn't go all the way to the top, I would imagine. Like if you look at the wires being bent over like that, basically they're the same height as that capacitor. So as long as the capacitor maximum height is what you can fit, then that should work for your setup. Bring the car back in here. I'm gonna cut some things to length so we can kind of get this situated here. I liked having the ESC sit in this way. I think this would probably be the best way to do it. It's a little tricky with that receiver wire wanting to be in the way. If you guys could see that, we're just gonna take our side cutters. I'm gonna cut through all these wires all at the same time. Everything's all joined up correctly. Yep, looks good. Commit. There we go. Man, I love this. Getting back into the groove of things. Working on RC cars in the shop. This is the less exciting part. I'm just gonna be wiring up some stuff here. So now we have the ESC basically fully wired up to be used for our application. The only wires that we don't have soldered yet are the motor wires. And we left these ones open because we're trying to get proportions right to make sure everything's going to be able to fit. We don't want to cut these to final length until we're absolutely sure of the way we want this thing to go into there. So we're going to go ahead and test fit this. Again, I'm just going to pull this, actually, well... So anyways, sizing wise, let's get this guy plugged in here and just see how this all fits together. That's gonna go there. This is gonna go down here. It's gonna plug in over here. Yeah. Now, let's just see here real quick, because so this little jumper right here, pull that out. I'm gonna grab this servo plug. This thing should plug right onto that. Yeah. Like no problem at all. But it still sticks up too high, doesn't it? Looking at this, yeah, it looks like that is basically the same length as, yeah, that's basically the same length as that thing. Now, oh, nice. Okay, can you guys see that? The jumper, the metal piece of the jumper is actually located just below that hole. So in all actuality, if I could point to this with a tool here, you can see the jumper is actually located right here. So that means we can cut the wing off of this plug and still be able to make that work. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna sacrifice this tab for the sake of being able to fit this properly. We're gonna cut this off. So now we have, that's our jumper, right? And we're definitely going to need a pair of pliers for this probably, maybe not, but we're just going to install that jumper back on top of that right there like that. There you go. So now it's just over top of the LiPo pins like that. Good to go. Sweet. Okay, so that takes care of our sizing problem. We don't need anything else for that. So that switch, red-black wire is going to go there. The receiver white signal wire is going to go over this side. We'll jam that down in there. I mean, with how tight this is, dude, we might not even need two-sided tape to mount this thing. Like, it is... That's pretty snug in there already. And then our signal wire, this one's a bit extra. Like, it's a little longer than I think we would have really needed, but you can always cut wires shorter. You can't cut them longer. Pro tip. And then this one's gonna come back around this side, and it's gonna get plugged in right there. Come on, baby. Here we go. Okay, so that's wired up that way. Our power wire, that's gonna come over here. It's gonna plug into our red GST plug that we had here. Boom, just like that. Good to go. Now those two are gonna get tucked right there like that. I think this wire should be okay. It's pretty much the perfect length. Not too much movement going on there. It's not enough to get sucked into the drive shaft, so that's looking pretty good. We can kind of mitigate the wire moving too much by pulling in the excess into the receiver box cover, just like that. And then for the motor wires, this was the last part that I wanted to solve, is we need to see about the length of these. So these have to sit right there, and then this servo wire also has to go back into here. Damn, that's a lot of wires, man. And then this here, let's just get the servo wire out of the way for right now, because we're not working with servo stuff. I want to know the motor wire length. So grabbing our white JST plug here, plugging it into here. Actually, shit, you know what could be the best idea ever, dude? If we ran this right like that, and then we cut these blue and yellow wire like really short, we could run the wire right like that, dude. Yeah, that would work. Those are gonna sit right like that, and then this blue wire is gonna immediately come over here. He's gonna sit right like that. So we could basically cut this blue one right here. That should work fine. Blue is going to the black. So this wire right here, we're gonna cut him to go right there. So he needs to be cut basically to that length right there, right? And then this red wire's got to go to the yellow one. So yellow is gonna come the same direction and he is gonna sit right here, right? And then he basically can get cut at the exact same spot, to be honest with you. He'll get cut right here. Boom. And then again, this winch wire is gonna go right there, so we'll cut it right like that. There we go. Okay. Okay. And we're gonna size this up for one last time. So putting it in this way here, leaving ourselves a little bit of space there. Jam the power wire down into the side of the receiver box housing here. It's super tricky to do. Sorry, I know my big fat head's in the way. There we go. Okay, and then plug this back into the receiver, just like so. And then we're gonna run the blue and yellow wires down along the side of the box, just like we were before. Tuck those in there. Give these a bit of a twist so they stay together. And then we will plug this into the winch. That guy will stay right there. That's all good. That's good. This is gonna go down here and get plugged into that. You can finally wire this steering servo wire back up here. That is gonna get plugged into the last port on the receiver here. It's gonna be a little tricky because this is getting pretty tight. Is it just me or is it like really difficult to see? There we go. There you go. Now this already came unplugged. That's not a great thing. I don't like seeing the plug come undone so easily. That'll go like that. That'll go like that. This will go here, right? Just like so. And then because I need more finger, dang it. Because we got everything basically where it needs to be right now, I'm just gonna see if this cover sticks on here properly. Let me just take, there we go. So cover on, everything's installed. How you like them apples, eh? That's pretty slick. There you go. Wires are all nice and tight still. Okay, so we have the ESC installed inside the receiver box here. These old first gen SCX10s had a really cool way to protect the receiver, or a cool place to mount the electronics anyways. It was big enough for us actually to mount the receiver and the 1080 ESC in there for the winch, all inside that box. So that's pretty neat. I've got my ESC to control my motor back here. Really the last thing we have to do now is put some power to it and see if it works. There will be a little bit of programming to do probably inside the transmitter, just to make sure that the winch goes forward and backwards correctly. Hopefully when we plug this in, it doesn't immediately decide to spool the winch in and destroy itself. So on the transmitter screen here, which I believe you guys should be able to see, there's a bunch of menu options here. Now, we're connected to Crusher, which is this guy here. Travel, steering, throttle, UX1, UX2. Okay, UX2 is this guy, because I believe that's what that was in there. UX1 is the winch. Switch. Okay, so here's the switches. This is the important one. So UX1 is a 3-position switch, which is probably A. Throttle trim is B, which we confirmed. C is steering trim. D is steering rate, which we also confirmed. And then E is the 2-position switch. So 2-position just means like it can go that way and this way. I think I'm gonna assume this is all set up correctly. We'll plug it in and see which way the winch starts to go first. And then from there, basically we'll need to kind of modify things and kind of see what happens from there. Okay, moment of truth. Either everything burns and catches on fire, the winch could destroy itself, or it just works, which I'm hoping it just works. That would be great. Haven't turned this thing on in years too, so let's hope for the best here. Did it work? Okay, first plug-in. Okay, nothing caught on fire. Does it smell like smoke? No. Just smells like grease. I heard this ESC turn on, so that means we got power in there. Wait, doesn't the ESC normally make the beeping sound through the motor? There ain't no way. It made the beeping sound through the winch motor. Okay, that's different. Let me turn on the ESC. Oh, there we go. It's alive. It's alive. It's been so long since I've moved this thing. Okay, we have steering, we have throttle. Do we have steering, or do we have the shifting servo? Yes. It also works correctly. very good. Okay, moment of truth here. Get ready to like, oh, I'm gonna have to multitask the hell out of this. I'm gonna have to get ready to like yank this battery just in case. I can hear the ESC moving, like trying to move the motor in the winch, but it's not actually moving it. I do believe that winch was working correctly before it blew up. I do believe so. Well, we need to figure out how to troubleshoot this. So I'm going to give me a minute. Let me do the troubleshooting steps necessary. I'll follow back up with you guys once I'm done. All right.
Hey guys, Chris Fix here, and today I'm going to show you how to complete your abandoned project car.
All right, so after a ton of troubleshooting, I figured out what was wrong. Basically, for my adventures in BC on the west coast, saltwater seizes things up. So the motor in here was actually seized. I was able to free it, which is great. I didn't actually end up having to replace anything in terms of like winch components themselves. I did end up, the troubleshooting steps that I went through is basically I just grabbed my spare winches. I had two. One had a bad gearbox and the other one's brand new. So ended up putting on new plugs on those so that they were ready to pop in here just in case. Plugged them in and was able to get them to go forward and backwards, no problem. So I said, all right, I guess we probably have like a motor problem or something with the old winch. And then I'm looking at the rest of the screws on this thing going, man, this thing's really rusty. There's not normally this much rust on my cars because everything here is freshwater. And I thought to myself, the FB tells me that I think that might be seized. So I basically just set the winch to go out and then yanked on the cable as hard as I could, and that winch started to move freely again. Now, one other thing I did do while I was off camera is I went ahead and set the fail-safes for the receiver. So I noticed when I shut the transmitter off and the battery was still plugged in that the winch would start to spool back in, and we can't have that. It's not going to work. So that would basically just damage the winch, exactly what I was talking about before, when it just sucks the lead all the way in. So I went and Google searched the user manual for how to set the fail-safes on the Spectrum SR515 receiver. On this one specifically, you don't need a bind plug. There's just a button on the receiver. You press and hold that button while plugging in the battery. It sets the receiver into bind mode, and you simply just go into the transmitter and you hit bind. That's going to be specific for your guys' transmitters, so it's not a be-all, end-all kind of thing that I could show in this video that's going to encompass everybody's transmitter and receiver setups. Consult your owner's manual for your specific setup, and I'm sure you'll be able to figure out how to set the fail-safes. But great news is we're on the right track here. So with the transmitter turned on and the battery plugged in, I get the first ESC powered on, and then we can power on the main ESC, which is going to turn on the receiver. I get the final tone on the secondary winch ESC. I get all my functions, forward, backwards, steering, all that works. I ended up finding out too that there was actually a bad switch on this controller. So I don't know if it's just been from sitting for so long, but when I was pressing the old winch controller switch, it was actually changing the throttle trim and also moving the winch. So it like was pressing two buttons at once, and it wasn't working correctly. So I switched over to a D switch, which was basically just steering gain, which I always have set to 100. I don't really need a switch for it. Once I had that all set up, the winch worked just fine. I basically was able to free this one up, and ta-da, there you go. The winch moves freely, and we have a fully working winch powered off of a 1080 Hobby Wing ESC, which is super badass. Like, you're probably never gonna break that setup for sure. The gearbox would be the first thing to go. So I'm super happy about that. Let's throw the battery tray, battery and all that stuff back in the car, and let's fire it up and see what it looks like with everything powered up. Alrighty, so there you go, you guys. The Jeep is fully operational again for a awesome 2025 crawling season. This thing's seen some serious mileage. The mirrors have been glued back on with Bondo. Like, oh man, this thing's seen its days. So I think we might have to do a new build soon, a new Jeep body, something like that, make it look really cool. But yeah, that's how to install a 1060 Hobby Wing ESC to control your worn 9.5 CTI winch. Just like that, we have a full functioning winch again, and we have reliability, which is like the most important thing to me when I'm out in the bush. I don't want this thing breaking down on me. Lots of power too. pretty crazy. Those little RC winches like that can pull that heavy truck up like that. I believe the weight on this truck is 11 pounds if it was being picked right up off the ground. So pretty wild, man. But I'm glad to have a winch again. I am super excited to get back on the trails with this sweet little Jeep of mine. And if you guys want to see future tech tips in the future, don't forget to subscribe. Most importantly, though, don't forget to be fancy, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Peace.